Hey everybody, it's the Commodore from the Clan of the Grey Wolf, and you are watching the weekly Wringer series here on clanofthegreywolf.com. Now, I have to first apologize for some of the comments last week because, as you guys saw, I had great difficulty posting the video, and I had many of you had great difficulty posting comments for one reason or another. We got all the kinks worked out. Everything worked the way that it should by a couple days into the week. But I'm sorry for the inconvenience, both in terms of getting the video out a little bit later than I wanted to, and also for the comments being a little bit broken. But we got it fixed. Everything's good. All's well that ends well. And I think everybody got to talk about this week's question that wanted to be able to contribute. So that's good. That's all I really care about. As long as everybody has a shot to answer the question, then I think we're in great shape. All right. So lots going on today. Want to talk and wrap up the question from last week, which is a simple one, but I think, and one that I think the Weekly Wringer, really thrives on, a kind of question that the Weekly Wringer thrives on about Smash Brothers, which we'll hash out a little bit, talk about some of the directions you guys went in. I'll give you my reasoning for my pick, and then we're gonna jump right into the question for next week, which really I think will be kind of a gut reaction, kind of an answer from most of you guys about some of the more recent movies that we've seen that are geek oriented, let's say. All right, so last week what I did was I asked you guys which Smash Brothers game was the best, was your favorite, however you guys wanted to interpret that. And there were a lot of responses, right? And as I kind of guessed, they were really all across the board. There were I can't say that the number really surprised me, but I can say, as I read through the comments and I kind of collected the votes and tallied everything, it was really interesting to see how things kind of moved as we went through the comments, because there was really kind of a movement for Super Smash Brothers, and then there was a movement for Melee, and then there was a movement for Brawl, and then it kind of went back to... It's just really interesting to see how all these things move. So sometimes I get that you guys remind each other of really cool things that happen in some of these games that go through the comments, and the comments just kind of move in those directions. In any case, I did localize this to Smash Brothers. It wasn't Smash Brothers, as I said last week, that reminded me of why I needed to ask this question. It was actually the PlayStation All-Stars game that Sony has announced is coming out for PlayStation, which has a very similar bent as Smash Brothers. And many games have come out that are clones of Smash Brothers, some of which were mentioned this week in the comments section. I happen to be a pretty big fan of a Smash Brothers clone that I played on Xbox called Shrek Slam, which is actually a really cool game for the original Xbox. And it was basically the same kind of principle as Smash Brothers, except it was in 3D and was not scant in terms of humor. It had a ton of humor, laced with fun. It's actually a really, really fun game, and a game that you can play with a crowd, and people have a good time with it. But it's not Smash Brothers, and that's why I wanted to localize this to Smash Brothers alone. I know there was a question about that in the comments. Why don't we get to the numbers first? Oh, you know what I need to do first? I need to welcome our new members. Sometimes it just slips my mind. This week, it definitely, we didn't have too many. There's actually only one that I know of, at least at the time of recording this video. So, as I always do, I'd like to welcome new members so that you guys can be a part of the community. So, welcome to Edge Blazer with a beautiful, I think one of the beautiful original art graphics from Edge from Final Fantasy VI. Very cool. Definitely gets you marks here in the Weekly Wringer, where Final Fantasy VI is certainly my favorite game of all time. And I know is Ruse as well, so you'll definitely get brownie points with us. Anyway, welcome to you, Edge Blazer. Thank you for the comment. Hope to see you back many, many times. Also, great to see a lot of you that maybe take a couple weeks off. You're coming back. Everybody comes back and starts making some comments. That's a great thing. I'm glad to know you guys are never really done with the Weekly Wringer. You might take a couple weeks to go look at something else, but then you're right back in with us, and that's exactly what I want to do. If things aren't staying interesting, then I'm not doing my job. So, welcome Edge Blazer. Now, let's get to the raw numbers of the question last week with Smash Brothers. Here's how the final tally, that, as I took it, ended up from last week. Super Smash Brothers actually garnered, for the Nintendo 64, actually garnered 4 votes, which I thought was pretty impressive. I wasn't sure how many people were going to pick that one. Smash Brothers Melee for GameCube actually ended up garnering 7 total votes. Again, a good showing. And Smash Brothers Brawl for Wii ended up winning with 11 total votes, as I counted them. And there were stray votes for other games that weren't actually Smash Brothers games, so I didn't include them on the list. Not because your vote wasn't important, but because it was definitely outside the scope of the question to begin with. Now, so that being said, clearly you guys' favorite is Brawl. For many, many, many different reasons, though. There were a lot of reasons that got brought up. Your least favorite is Smash Brothers 64, which I think is interesting as well. Many reasons for that, which you guys went into. So, the prevailing sense that I get is this. Let me just try to summarize what you guys say in general, and then I'll dive into the specific comments, as I do here on the Weekly Ringer. 1, those of you that really love Smash Brothers 64 probably mostly love it out of pure nostalgia. It was a game that you played a long time ago. As I recall, that game came out in '99, I believe, in America. It came out earlier in Japan. It was supposed to be a Japan-only game, as far as I know, but was so popular that they ended up selling it in America, and thank God for that. But so the original Smash Brothers, I think, is voted only by folks that have a very strong sense of nostalgia and just have that attachment to it, and that's why they voted for it. Melee tends to be for those folks that are more competitive in nature. There were some nostalgia votes for it, but it was more for folks that really get into the speeds and feeds, the nuts and bolts of fighting games, and of how Smash Brothers Brawl really compares as a competitive gaming platform, really, as it were, for people out there, both in terms of Major League Gaming and so on and so forth. And then Brawl really gets the kind of leftover vote, the vote of folks that really enjoy Nintendo characters and have an affinity for characters that might not have been in the other games, like Sonic or someone. Just continue to move on, right? So many of these different characters that came along in the process, In any case, Brawl is kind of the catch-all. And I think it's a good thing that, the idea that Brawl is the best, that's a good thing, right? Because I think any good series that goes and makes sequels, hopefully the last game in the series that is most recent, is the one that's the best. I think if people are doing their job, that's the way it should be. It's one of the reasons why Final Fantasy is so bad now. It's why it's so, and this isn't this bad, why it's so disappointing for those of us that loved the older Final Fantasies. It's because I just don't think the new ones are the best entrants in the series. Meanwhile, you look at Smash Brothers Brawl, if that is the best game, it's good, because that means it's the last one. Nintendo's been doing their job refining all the way through. I think that's a great thing. Anyway, let's jump into some of the specific comments. DTX180 mentioned that the mystery, kind of the mysterious nature of Super Mario Brothers 64, or Super Smash Brothers 64, was something that really played in his favor. I agree with that. I thought that was a great point. The idea of the hand kind of mysteriously reaching down and grabbing some of the figurines, almost as if, you're playing the realm of the creator and you're watching these, characters that you're picking and selecting and dragging in kind of do battle and see what happens. And that's kind of the whole fun of the series, right? Is that, hey, what would happen if Yoshi and Mario got in a sparring match, right? And that's the whole thing. And I remember one of the things that I loved most about the original Super Smash Brothers is the original commercial. For those of you that haven't seen it, you need to go out there and see it. I remember watching it very vividly, remember, from my high school days when that commercial came on, and it was like they're just singing "So Happy Together," and they're all hand in hand, and then all of a sudden, they just piss each other off and they start beating the crap out of each other. That is exactly what Super Smash Bros. It's just this mystery. Like, why would they start fighting each other? Why are they hurting each other? What's going on? They all seem to get along so damn well in all the other games. That's the whole mystery of Super Smash Bros. 64, and I think it's one of the reasons. I think it's a legit reason for people to be able to select it, because after that, into Melee and especially into Brawl, the game really didn't evolve that way at all. It evolved into very much a kind of, this is serious and this is a league and they're fighting each other because they're, because it's more of like a classic fighting game. They got beef and they're going to take it out. And the original was more like, hey, let's see what happens when Kirby goes and fights Pikachu, right? I mean, it's just kind of crazy fun, right? I think that is a good reason to vote for Super Smash Bros. 64. Namekian talked about the GameCube controller being awesome and one of the great contributing factors to why Melee was so tight and so good. And many of you echoed those sentiments. Even those of you that really liked Brawl mentioned that the best way to play Brawl was with a GameCube controller. And I think there was a good point to be made by that. I think the GameCube controller actually is very underrated. I think only one or two of you talked about how great the 64 controller was. I played a little 64 yesterday with some friends of mine, and I have to say, it leaves a lot to be desired. After playing so many years afterwards, with a lot of very tight controllers, it's just not there. It doesn't have that same kind of quality, and I do understand why the 64 was kind of scoffed at for many reasons. In any case, the GameCube controller is very tight. The only thing I don't really like are the squeeze triggers on the outside. They have a ton of landscape to pull in. You've got to cover a lot of ground to pull one of those triggers, and that never felt quite right for me. It's not a bumper like a bumper on a 360 controller. It's not quite that easy, but I like a little bit of a give in those triggers, just like the 360 does it. I think it does it really, really well. In any case, there you have it. I think the GameCube controller adds a great amount of a dynamic as to why Melee is so competitive and why it's so good. Let's see. Unseasonably made a good comment, and that is that Super Smash Brothers and the concept of Smash Brothers really defies logic, because I don't like fighting games, and I used to kind of like fighting games a lot, especially back when Super Smash Brothers came out for 64. I was pretty into fighting games back then, but you could absolutely hate fighting games, hate them, and still really get a great kick out of the novelty of Smash Brothers. That to me is a sign of a great game. It really takes the format of what we know as a fighting game and turns it on its head to being something that is not like the others. It's very novel, but it's still fun, and you can always kind of go in evolutions and waves of, this is fun, I'm going to put it down for a little while, you pick it back up, it's fun again. It never loses that fun element. And I think that's the sign of a very well-made game. The idea of, beating people off of the stage versus, diminishing a life bar, I think is a fantastic idea, and they did a great job with that. So I thought that was a keen, observation. Smash Brothers is a fighting game for people that don't like fighting games, because it just, and even if you do love fighting games, I think Melee probably is your game of choice, but it's just fun to play. It's a game. It's a fighting game you can get in there and really have fun. And even if you get down to some of you mentioned the idea of playing professionally, playing on the circuit. Even if you play with real great competitive zeal, the game is still fun. Farrier mentioned the level creator in Brawl being an extra dimension. One of the reasons why Brawl was so great. I think that's a great point. Anytime you can create a game that is so heavily dependent on level, right? Think about all the games that you know and love, and think about how many of them are really tied to fantastic level design, I'm not sure any of them have the same, like if you took a traditional fighting game, the level really isn't important at all. It's more just for scenery, right? There are some ways that the level might, change or break or this or that, and that's cool, but it's, when you have this dynamic of people flying off the screen, and that's the whole goal, then the stage is very, very important. So being able to have a little bit of level creator freedom in Brawl is really important, and I couldn't